The interview of Tucker Carlson with Vladimir Putin was a big event that attracted a lot of attention. Vladimir Putin comes over in this interview calm and in the lead of the situation. In this video, I want to analyze his language on how he creates an image of a reliable leader. So this video is not about the truthfulness of facts or about politics. It's just about the language. And now I wanted to point out also that I watched the interview in the original language so that I don't miss out on any nuances. The first thing about how Putin speaks in the interview is that his voice is always rather slow and calm and quiet. There are little variation. It conveys also calmness to the listener. Second thing is how the interview starts. Carlson asks a confronting question. Putin answers with a question. Are we having here a talk show or a serious talk? Carlson started even laughing, but immediately agreed that they will have a serious talk. Then the next, what Putin says is again a question. He asks Tucker if he studied history, which he did. So the answer is again, yes, an agreement. Then Putin says he will allow himself a very brief 1 minute talk about history, asks for permission, gets another agreement. Yes, of course, it's interesting. Go ahead. What Putin did, he asked 3 questions where he knew in advance the answer will be positive, and it's called a yes set. The purpose of asking at the beginning 3 questions and getting 3 yes, he creates an atmosphere of agreement between them. He leads the whole interview in an atmosphere of agreement, not confrontation, judgment, or argument, but peaceful discussion. And then he goes in, which is not a short talk about the history, and he knew, so it was obvious that the question about the 1 minute discourse in the history was asked on purpose. And then he goes in all details of the Russian-Ukrainian history. The human mind loves stories. We are interested to get immersed in the story. Moreover, telling this story, the history of Russia and Ukraine from the very beginning, Putin uses facts, dates, names. So telling this story, he also builds the authority and trust. After telling this, Putin also uses his private stories to illustrate and support his opinion. Another element of the language of Putin in the interview is proving his points. Our mind loves reasoning. If there is a certain point we love when there is explanation to that. Why is it so? And Putin uses this naming the reasons why what he says is true. And throughout the interview, where he explains the development of the relationships between Russia and Western, and specifically with the US, he builds a contrast between Russia and the US position. So he uses very permissive language talking about Russia, and rather aggressive language about US. He shows how Russia is seeking collaboration with the US and NATO, seeks alternatives, looks for solutions, and expresses agreement with the situations, whereas uses a different language about the US, which is expanding, aggressive, using sanctions, pressurizing. So he shows this contrast between two countries throughout the interview. A very important element in the language of Vladimir Putin are so-called double binds. He uses a fact to prove something else. And so at the beginning of the interview, he asked Tucker if they are having a talk show or a serious talk. And as Tucker agreed that this is a serious talk, he used it a couple of times when Tucker wanted to take in a different direction, and in the interview, Putin wouldn't allow this. He kept his line and used that agreement made at the beginning of the interview. So he says, you agreed that we are having a serious talk. This is a fact, and that's why I will continue talking. Tucker already gave his agreement at the beginning. He cannot start arguing. It helps Putin to continue in his direction. One more time he uses a double bind in a very important situation when he talks about the resolution of the situation. Western countries, NATO, US, deliver weapons to Ukraine to support Ukraine and to achieve peace. Putin uses a double bind. He says, if you were interested in peace, which is true, you would stop all the deliveries of weapons to Ukraine. This sentence was not translated correctly, rather aggressive, as if Putin says you should stop delivering weapons, which he doesn't say. He talks much more. He says, if you were interested in peace in Ukraine, an end of this war, you would stop delivering weapons, and then in a few weeks everything would be over. Putin also proves his point, gives his points authority by using the expression, every politologist or even simply a smart person understands that what I'm saying is true. He uses also, so it's a common sense. In other words, he's saying if you're a smart person, you will understand this. And it's another smart move using the language to create agreement and to make his point. One more very important element in Putin's language is use of metaphors. He uses it when Carlson is asking him about coalitions between countries, who is with whom and who is against whom, which Putin doesn't want to comment about. So he gives a metaphor of the brain. He talks about two halves of the human brain. Two halves have their own functions. The right half of your brain is governing the left part of your body, and vice versa. The left part of the brain governs the right part of the body. And still, the brain works as a whole. And if it doesn't, it is a serious disease. So the world also has to function as a whole. Now imagine Putin would just say that we all have to live in peace and work together. This would be a nonsense. It would be very unbelievable. When he gives a metaphor of the brain, there is no way not to agree. Instead of having an utopical wish so that the world is in peace and collaborative, he gives this a metaphor which makes it very clear that there is no different way for the world to exist. There is one planet and we have to collaborate. One more time he uses a metaphor about the current situation where China and other countries are growing much faster and have a huge influence in the world. And he uses a metaphor of the sunrise. It is like a sunrise. You cannot stop it. You cannot stop the sunrise. So you have to adjust your actions according to the new situation in the world, he makes a point that neither sanction nor pressurizing from the West, or specifically from the US, doesn't stop the redistribution of the force in the world. Again, he makes a very powerful point using a metaphor. So those are the elements that were used in the interview by Vladimir Putin. Yes said to start immediately the interview in agreement and go throughout the interview in a peaceful and calm manner, still having a control over what he speaks. He uses reasoning, explaining very clearly why he makes certain points. He uses storytelling and builds trust and authority as an intelligent leader using facts, names, and dates from the history. He uses double binds very cleverly and metaphors. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, this video is not about political or historical truthfulness of the interview. It is just language analysis. Bye-bye.